Hi, welcome to Kevin Alone's audiobook reading Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Part 2.1. The music industry was organized to sell albums, a model that evolved during a time when listening to music was largely an activity we did at home. Sony changed that in 1979 with the introduction of the Walkman. But even the Walkman, and later the Discman, was limited to the number of cassette tapes or CDs you could carry in addition to the device. The development of the MP3 music format changed all that. Digital compression allowed for a very high quantity of songs to be stored on relatively inexpensive and highly portable digital music devices. Our ability to walk out of the house with only one easy to carry device transformed music into something we largely listen to away from home. And the MP3 not only changed where we listen to music, it also transformed us from an album collecting culture to a song collecting culture. While the industry, or the music industry, was still busy trying to sell us album, a model that no longer suited consumer behavior, Apple introduced their iPod by offering us 1,000 songs in your pocket. With the iPod and iTunes, Apple did much better job of communicating the value of both the MP3 player relative to how we lived our lives. Their advertising didn't offer exhaustive descriptions of product details, but it wasn't about them. It was about us, and we understood why we wanted it. Apple did not invent the MP3, nor did they invent the technology that became the iPod, yet they are credited with transforming the music industry with it. The multi-gigabyte portable hard drive, or the hard drive music player, was actually invented by Creative Technology Limited, a Singapore-based technology company that rose to prominence by making the Sound Blaster audio technology that enables home PCs to have sound. In fact, Apple didn't introduce the iPod until 22 months after Creative's entry into the market. This detail alone calls into question the assumption of a first mover's advantage. Given their history in digital sound, Creative was more qualified than Apple to introduce a digital music product. The problem was they advertised their product as a 5 gigabyte MP3 player. It is exactly the same message as Apple's 1,000 songs in your pocket. The difference is Creative told us what their product was, and Apple told us why we needed it. Only later, once we decided we had to have an iPod, did what mattered, and we chose the 5 gigabyte version, 10 gigabyte version, and so on. The tangible details that proved we could get the 1,000 songs in our pocket. Our decision started with why, and so did Apple's offering. How many of us can say with certainty that indeed an iPod is actually better than Creative Zen's iPods, for example, are still plagued with battery life and battery replacement issues? They tend to just die. Maybe a Zen is better. The reality is, we don't even care if it is. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And it is Apple's clarity of why that gives them such a remarkable ability to innovate, often competing against companies seemingly more qualified than they, and succeed in industries outside their core business. The same cannot be said for companies with a fuzzy sense of why. When an organization defines itself by what it does, that's all it will ever be able to do. Apple's competitors, having defined themselves by their products or services, regardless of their differentiating value proposition, are not afforded the same freedom. Gateway, for example. started selling flat screen TVs in 2003. Having made flat screen monitors for years, they were every bit as qualified to make and sell TVs. But the company failed to make a credible name for itself among consumer electronics brands and gave up the business 2 years later to focus on its core business. Dell came out with PDAs in 2002 and MP3 player in 2003, but lasted only a few years in each market. Dell makes good quality products and is fully qualified to produce these other technologies. The problem was they had defined themselves at what they did. They made computers, and it simply didn't make sense to us to buy a PDA or MP3 player from them. It didn't feel right. How many people do you think would stand online for 6 hours to buy a new cell phone from Dell, as they did for the release of Apple's iPhone? People couldn't see Dell as anything more than a computer company. It just didn't make sense. Poor sales quickly ended Dell's desire to enter the small electronic goods market. Instead, they opted to focus on their core business. Unless Dell, like so many others, can rediscover their founding purpose, cause, or belief, and start with why in all they say and do, all they will ever do is sell computers. They will be stuck in their core business. Apple, unlike its competitors, has defined itself by why it does things, not what it does. It is a computer company, but a company that challenges the status quo and offers individuals simpler alternatives. Apple even changed its legal name in 2007 from Apple Computer Incorporated to Apple Incorporated to reflect the fact that they were more than just a computer company. Practically speaking, it doesn't really matter what a company legal name is. For Apple, however, having the word computer in their name didn't limit what they could do. It limited how they thought of themselves. The change wasn't practical, it was philosophical. Apple's why was formed at its founding in the late 1970s and hasn't changed to this date. Regardless of the products they make or the industries into which they migrate, their why still remains a constant. And Apple's intention to challenge accepted thinking has proved prophetic. As a computer company, they redirected the course of the personal computing industry. As a small electronics company, they have challenged the traditional dominance of companies like Sony and Philips. As a purveyor of mobile phones, they pushed the old hands, Motorola, Ericsson, and Nokia, to re examine their own businesses. Apple's ability to enter and even dominate so many different industries has even challenged what it means to be a computer company in the first place. Regardless of what it does, we know why Apple exists. The same cannot be said for their competitors, although they all had a clear sense of why at some point. It was one of the primary factors that helped each of them become billion-dollar companies over the course of time. All of Apple's competitors lost their why. Now all those companies define themselves by what they do. We make computers. They turned from companies with a cost into companies that sold products. And when that happens, price, quality, service, and features become the primary currency to motivate a purchase decision. At that point, a company and its products have ostensibly become commodities. As any company forced to compete on price, quality, service, or features alone can attest, it is very hard to differentiate for any period of time or build loyalty on those factors alone. Plus, it costs money and is stressful waking up every day trying to compete on that level alone. Knowing why is essential for lasting success and the ability to avoid being lumped in with the others.